Welcome back. The tank video right this second has 92 likes. I'm going to give you guys the benefit of the doubt and assume you get it to 100. So I'm going to film this video in anticipation. If you want another one past this one, make sure you hit that like button because that is the threshold we're going for. Each and every day I'll continue to film these, like at least until I'm out of ideas, which will be a few episodes at least, as long as we get 100 likes in 24 hours. So first and foremost, if you're a fan of this series, go ahead and hit that like button. If not, don't hit it yet. Let's see if you like it first. Today is a special build, one in which that I've at least enjoyed a portion of, meaning I haven't fully kind of fleshed this out in gameplay. However, from like a theoretical perspective, I think this might be fun, and it's a druid build. Specifically, it's a solo druid build, and we're going solo only. This is one-handed solo, not two-handed solo. This is a build that hopefully will support you through the entire game with only you on the battlefield. If you've ever played Too Many Bones, you know it continues to be a little bit of an issue. 1v3, 1v4, that many turns in between your next turn is really hard to survive. So in this druid build, we're bringing companions on the battlefield to help us out. With just more bodies, it's cannon fodder. It's going to help to block those enemies. It's also going to help to put down some damage as well when there's not another adventurer out there. So without further ado, let's look at our races. So if you're familiar with druids, it's basically like a nature wizard, right? In particular, my interaction with a druid most recently is on my Diablo 3 druid build, and that's kind of what's inspired this build. The idea is to summon creatures out onto the battlefield, be hypermobile, and be able to move around and survive what will be an onslaught of enemies. I will say, from an art perspective, we probably would be best served with a wood elf, but we're not going with art. We're going with the best possible race I can think of. And there are a couple things here. I want the highest health possible, so we're starting with 5. You need survivability. You're going to have to tank hits eventually, so that gives us Imperial and Argonian. The other thing is it has to have Magicka, not the one stat like some of these other races have. I'd prefer 3 or 4. High Elf honestly would be perfect. It also allows you to heal yourself and throw you to kind of like the beginning tiles. But we've already done High Elf, so we're going to do something a little bit different. This is full magic. We're not going into really use combat whatsoever, so that puts Argonian ahead. Imperial has a nice innate ability here once per battle. When you would be dealt 3 or fewer damage, prevent that damage, survivability, and instead gain that much tenacity. Tenacity will be incredibly important in this build in getting companions out, as we'll see with our class in just 1 second. So that is a big time contender. Argonian, on the other hand, is pretty simple. Once per battle, when you'd be dealt damage, prevent all of that damage. It's honestly a toss-up for me. In this instance, that's ultimate survivability. I think we have some other ways to get tenacity out on the board here. So we're going to go with Argonian. 5 health, 3 stamina, 2 magicka, 1 combat, which is important. If I'm not going into combat whatsoever, I can't untrain combat, but that gives me 5 slots to be able to build from the other direction on my board. So that's what we're going. But just know, I mean, it could be a lot of different races here. High Elf is probably the best, frankly, because of the 4 magicka, or at least it gives you a really big discount on that magicka that you're going to need to train. Otherwise, regardless, we're going with Argonian. It's still going to provide some great survivability. You know, being able to tank 1 hit per battle strategically is going to be a big deal. We've got our core stats here. They're out on the board. We'll talk about how we want to progress that in just a second. But before then, we have to pick a class, and this is the most important part of the build. This is the basically a class I absolutely fell in love with in solo play. I frankly had difficulty in true solo outside of this particular build. I moved to two-handed for most of my solo plays. Regardless, I think Warden is incredibly powerful because of the very first class ability here in Dive. For 1 tenacity, you have to be in magic battle form. Once again, that's why we're leaning into Magicka here, and as you can probably guess, some mage skill lines. Deploy companion unit Diving Cliff Racer to an unoccupied adjacent hex. It is a companion controlled by you. This companion is removed at the end of battle once per battle. Many times I'm out on the battlefield and I am spending that and dropping it right out of the gates to basically tank the hit. There's ways to make Diving Cliff Racer even more powerful, but just know that being able to deploy this at any time just as a shield is awesome. And the way companions work is they just roll enemy combat dice. So in this particular instance, it comes in with 3 health, it has 1 range, and it throws 2 enemy combat dice at your enemies. It also has dodge, which is, it actually, for me, it triggered quite often. When this unit is engaged by an opposing unit, prevent damage dealt to this unit equal to the number of rolled skill dice that do not deal damage. So any misses there are also extra defense that it gets. It also has rush that allows it to take a second movement turn if it's not within range. So when you drop this, and let's imagine, we're 4 or 5 spaces away, it can move well ahead of you in order to be able to get that first attack before it's attacked and knocked out or whatever it might be. So this goes perfect with the second class ability here, which is Bond with Nature. Heal a party member in sight for 2 HP. If it's a beast, it may exceed its health stat. This thing already has 3 HP. Let's imagine the Red Guard Marauder completely whiffed and it's still sitting at 3. This next go around, I can trigger Bond with Nature and now it has 5. You can also spend 3 for Living Vines. This is enduring. So after a beast companion, which this once again is a beast companion, takes damage, if it is not defeated, it heals for 1. So, it's already has the rush survivability, then it's healing itself for 1 if it's surviving. And once again, remember, if it dies, I actually get healed for 3 HP. So there were instances where I was planning on it dying so I could actually heal and move on. And then for 4, we have Advanced Species. A companion may immediately move 2 hexes and engage. If it's a beast, it may move up to 2 additional hexes and increase its combat stat by 2 for this engage. As you might imagine, that's pretty incredible. It's giving it another turn and making it basically a super companion, something I used all of the time. And last but not least, we have the 5 companion result here, and it's Feral Guardian. Feral Guardian is a different companion. It can't be out at the same time because it's actually the same exact chip. However, it's more powerful. It goes from 3 to 5 health out of the gates. It has 3 combat stat and 1 range. It also has rush and it has maim. Maim applies a maim status effect and it basically halves the damage that an enemy is going to do against you. Specifically, it reads, when this unit rolls combat skill dice, the total damage rolled is reduced by half, then rounded down. This effect does not apply to true damage, so you could imagine how incredibly powerful that is. So, if you can continue to get that tenacity, you can go out of the gates with Diving Cliff Racer, have it rush ahead, have it either tank hits or die and heal you for 3, and then come back with Feral Guardian in the same exact battle. Don't worry, we have ways to make these things even more powerful. So in order to get to our master side of our class abilities, we have to defeat a level 10 or 20 enemy or a quest unit with either the Diving Cliff Racer or the Feral Guardian companion. I found that sort of difficult in my playthrough, but it's still totally doable. But when you do, its innate ability goes to, after a beast companion is defeated, heal yourself for 3 HP and gain 1 tenacity. That is good. We want that tenacity to start to build up so we can get that second companion out. Bond with Nature. Bond with Nature gets more powerful. Living Vines actually stays the same. We get Savage Beast, which was actually really useful for me in my playthrough. Take an immediate turn for an adjacent non-quest beast enemy as if it is a companion controlled by you. That's a complete game changer. It could be a very high level enemy as well. There's no distinction there. Advanced Species also, it's that taking the extra turn. There's no change to that one. And Feral Guardian obviously continues to bring out Feral Guardian. With many of the classes, there's always, at least one kind of class result that's a little more niche or something that I find not that useful. In Warden, I've used absolutely everything, as much as some might be conditional or like circumstantial. I've found all of them useful and I love the Warden. It might be my favorite class if I ever do kind of a tier ranking. but I don't know. I need to spend more time with others. Warden's definitely up there though. All right, we have our Argonian Warden where this is half the battle, and this class is probably played the largest role of any of my builds so far. So we're already really in the weeds on what we want to try to do as the Druid. We want to bring these beasts out onto the battlefield and have them do our bidding, use them as walls, manipulate them. They may survive. If they die, we don't care. We actually get stronger when they die. How do we really take this build to the next level? I struggle a little bit here with the order of operations, essentially what we should actually upgrade first. I think a couple things to note here. Starting at 5 health is pretty good. You're going to want to upgrade at probably, to 7 fairly early. I mean, those are both 1 XP costs, pretty easy to get up and going. That's going to take you, 1 or 2 encounters. Combat, we're not going to touch. Magicka, we're definitely going to want to build up as we also upgrade cooldown. Cooldown's a minimum of 3. That puts Magicka at a minimum of 3. Magicka also is your range on those magic spells or attacks that we might be getting into here. So just know that that is a priority. Stamina, mobility is good, especially in solo builds. Mobility is more important in Elder Scrolls in my mind than in Too Many Bones, and more important in the true solo than any sort of multi-adventurer campaign that you're going out on. There are really 2 core skill lines we're going for here. The marquee skill line that we really want to invest in is Daedric Summoning. That's why I put it straight across from combat. I'm not upgrading combat anymore, although you could if you wanted to go in a little bit of a hybrid build, but remember, combat can't be rolled in magic battle form. You need to be in magic battle form to do a lot of the warden stuff. So we want to stay there as much as possible to make sure that we have the flexibility to spend that tenacity and get those companions out on the board when we need them. But we have a little bit of a problem right out of the gates. We still have to do damage. As much as you have companions out there, you still have to be able to do damage. The tricky part here is Warden is great and will be very, very helpful. Daedric Summoning makes Warden much better, because it enhances companions and gives you opportunities for even more companions. But out of the gates, you got to do some damage. So that's why I'm almost thinking we have to start with Destruction Staff. The tricky part here, and if you were playing a multi-game, I'd say go right to Daedric Summoning. But as solo, you need damage. Damage has to get done. So I might start with Destruction Staff. And I'm only going 4 shock. 4 shock, you roll 3 of them, you can hit that first result and do 6 damage. You can have huge turns where you're doing 4 damage a piece on them. You also can gain the tenacity that you're going to need to be able to get all of those companions out on the board. So that can also be a saver. Sometimes I was actually just hoping to gain the 2 tenacity and do the 1 true damage so I can get my companions out on the board. So you might want to start there. Do you have to train all 3? No. Could you go 2 and then maybe like a destructive touch where you're just knocking out enemies? You could absolutely do that as well. I just love the simplicity of 4 shock. I think there's obviously just the 1 downfall in that second result where you have to take true damage, and that 3rd result as well. And there's no other adventurer. Companions don't count as adventurers, so you are the only one taking it in true solo. We do have some healing. We have some recoverability. That's why we're probably trying to get health up to eventually by end game, like 8 or 9, so we can deal with Destruction Staff. Regardless, it's probably a necessity. So Daedric Summoning is where we really want to go. We have to pick a level 1 first. We're going to go with Daedric Curse. Daedric Curse, I found, was a little bit more difficult for me to use without how we're going to alter this build in a little bit. I guess that'll make sense once I get there. I hope I remember to mention it. But Daedric Curse has to be adjacent, right? So there was many times where I'd like to use it, but I was trying to kind of stay back and let the companions actually hit. But it's a necessity here. I think the bound armaments in True Solo is not very good. At the end of any unit's turn, you may choose an adventurer in 3 battle forms that we do not use. To perform and engage, rolling through enemy combat dice. This engage ignores enemy skill, ethereal, then exhausts the die. So, I mean, you get the gist. If this is pure solo, we can't use that. We absolutely have to go with Daedric Curse out of the gates. We have a bit of a decision here. Well, sort of a decision. It's the first decision is pretty easy. The second one is Expert Summoner, and this one skill is exactly why we are in Daedric Summoning. The combat stat and movement of companions you control are increased by X, so that's up to 3. Remember, there are other ways in our class abilities to do that as well. After one of these companions engages, reduce the skill by 1. If the die would be reduced to 0, exhaust it. It does have 3-0 results where you will earn yourself some tenacity, which we might need elsewhere. I use this all the time. This made companions completely overpowered. If I was also able to use my class abilities to pump them up, it's pretty great. Power Stone is a luxury. So this result right above. This is something that I would say it's a maybe, but very useful. You may change the result of up to X other skill dice you roll this engage to the side of your choice. It's pretty simply just giving you some insurance. I mean, you could whiff on that one, but you could change up to 2 to the result that you need. So then we get to level 3, which is another really juicy one here. I mean, you could go up to 2 here, and this is definitely something to think about. It's summon. You can deploy a companion Clan Fear right there, or you can deploy that one right there. What is that? Atro Notch. To an unoccupied adjacent hex. The Clan Fear is a companion controlled by you. This companion is removed at the end of battle. So doing the same exact thing Warden is doing, but it gives you that second unit. Once again, only one can come out at a time. So if it's out there tanking and surviving for you, great. I guess we should probably go over the skills. First is Divert. This unit cannot lose its last HP until it already has 1 HP. So it starts with 6 here on this side. It's got to get slivered down to 1 to be able to actually die. So it is pretty survivable, and it has 1 defense on it, which is huge. Both of these have defense. And then Clan Fear has aggressive. After rolling enemy combat dice, this unit re-rolls all misses 1 time before dealing damage to its target. Pretty obvious. That's pretty awesome. This has 2 combat, 3 range. Oh, I forgot to mention the range on the other one. The other one's only 1 range, but 3 range here and 1 defense. The one thing of note is the buffs that Warden gives you on your companions are all beast related. This is not that type. I think it's pronounced Daedra is the type of companion these are. So you won't, when these die, you won't get healed for 3, for example. And last but not least is our level 4 Tempered Soul. So this is a drained result. Oh, one thing to mention is you do have to drain the summon dice here. So getting that second one out would allow you to get it out again within the same battle. That's definitely something to keep in mind when deciding whether to go with a Power Stone or another summon. But Tempered Soul is another drain result. Select any level 1 or 5 enemy from the defeated stack. Deploy it with full HP to an unoccupied adjacent hex. This unit is now a companion controlled by you. The companion is removed at the end of battle. Once again, yet another companion. So you can be by yourself. You can deploy a Clan Fear. You can deploy a Feral Guardian. You can also deploy a Nord Marauder or whatever 1 or 5 unit is sitting on the defeated stack. You can buff all of these with Expert Summoner. That does tick down over time. You can use Advanced Species on all of them. A companion may immediately move up to 2 hexes and engage. Then if it's also a beast, it may move up to 2 additional hexes and increase its combat stat by 2. So, obviously you want it to be this beast type like Feral Guardian, but if you have to, you can use that with Clan Fear and boost both its combat and its movement. All right, so this is where we are. Argonian, Warden, Daedric Summoning. We're also throwing in Destruction Staff. But I think there's a couple other things we can do to really round this out if we happen to see them in town. And we'll go no further than Acrobat. If you remember, one of the things that inspired me here is my Diablo 3 build of my Druid. It's hyper mobile on top of being able to summon cool beasts. It can just jump around the map. So we're going to have some fun here. We're going to go with Acrobat Fleet Phantom while this die is in your cooldown track. So this is very much like heavy armor. It's rolled and goes into your cooldown track and gives you a continuous benefit. You may move up to X hexes at the start of your turn. So you could roll up to 5. Talk about extra mobility. That is incredibly awesome. In a solo build, of course, survivability goes with any sort of defense or extra health, but mobility, especially when you are manipulating companions out on the field to block for you, is huge. Having acrobatics, I would imagine, is incredible. In the build that I had done, it was Daedric Summoning and Destruction Staff. Acrobatics I have not tested with this build, but I can imagine it's going to be pretty awesome because I was hoping to have more mobility past what was sitting in the stamina. The other option we are going with is Rapid Maneuver. So with Rapid Maneuver, if this is in your cooldown track, you may move through enemies. After moving, deal 2 damage to each enemy you move through, or for the other result, heal for 1, depending on how many you move through. So let's imagine a world where we roll Fleet Phantom for 4, meaning we can move 1, 2, 3, 4 spots to start our turn. However, let's also imagine that we've rolled Rapid Maneuver and we've done instead 2, 4, 6 damage, 2 to each of those. That's just at the beginning of our turn for those 2 sitting in our cooldowns. Or maybe you're low on health and you really need that health result to pop up. Hey, maybe you actually train Power Stone and you're able to switch it to the result you needed. Regardless, it gives you options, not only to be hyper mobile, but also just to deal a bunch of damage. Let's imagine that you had your companions out there chipping away and there was a bunch of enemies sitting there at 1 or 2 health and you could just knock them out at the beginning of your turn. Or maybe it's just a couple or even 1 that you knock out. That 1 less unit on the map, not having to deal with them, especially in a solo build, makes all the difference in the world. Another fun option that might happen to pop up for you that I think you might have some fun with is actually speech. With speech, they're all level 1 and you can train a whole bunch of them. And when you roll them, you basically add the result up. And we're going to go ahead and train 2 persuasive will. Combine the values of all persuasive will dice rolled. So it's up to 5 apiece. Choose an adjacent enemy with a level equal to or less than this value. So the max would be 10. This unit becomes a companion controlled by you. At the end of the round, this unit becomes an enemy again. Yes, it's a 1-round result. These are drain dice. Speech dice come in handy elsewhere in the game that you'll kind of run into, so it's nice to have those. This is just a nice to have. This is just if it happens to pop up as a trainer in the towns. It's just yet another way to get companions out, and we also have ways to boost companions. So you might just run into gold where you are able to take control of a level 10 and boost its combat dice and do all that other fun stuff that we can do in this build. Regardless, it's just another option. You could also take this into kind of a hybrid build and add something like 2-handed if you can't find Destruction Staff. Maybe you started with Daedric Summoning and you rushed into a town and tried to train something else up. 2-handed would work fine. You're going to have to get into that heavy battle form. But it is an option if you just need some early damage. I've heard of some talk of like not being able to find the right lines. I think if you get an early line that just gets you going from a damage perspective, in most of my plays, I saw like absolutely everything. There was a couple where I was really hoping to get into some of these thief kind of secondary lines because I typically won't start with those and they hadn't popped up. But for the most part, you should be able to see most of them, especially if you're scouting towns and making sure the right constellation is represented in that town so you get the right types of skill lines. And that's it. That is the Solo Druid build. Just Daedric Summoning and Destruction Staff is tested and approved. It at least got me to the end game. If I finally get all of those videos out to the end game, you'll actually see the majority of this build up and running. But like I said, if you add acrobatics in there, that is just a really fun line that I can also think of a lot of really awesome ways to use that through a bunch of different builds. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff. 100 likes in 24 hours gets another one of these videos. I also want to know what you want to hear about. What are the lines or maybe even the builds? What are the archetypes that you are interested in kind of hearing how I would put a build together? And most importantly, many of you are starting to get those games. I want to hear about your builds. hey, if you submit a really awesome build, maybe I make a video on it. Who knows? And with all that said, have a great day. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. I don't know.